You have full control on how your objects are casting shadows in layout. If I wanted to, let me do a quick render. If I didn't want this object right here to cast a shadow, well, I could go into the Object Properties Render tab, and I could say I don't want you to cast a shadow, I don't want you to receive a shadow, and I don't want you to shadow yourself. So I can just uncheck these and I could control that. But recently I was working on a project where I needed to I didn't want the object to not cast a shadow. I wanted an element on the object to not cast a shadow, so I wanted to do it by surface. And what I ended up doing originally was just making that element on the object a separate object, which then allowed me to come in here and check these and I was good to go. But I picked up a really great tip from Weeple on the New Tech forums, and it gives you even greater control because we can do it by surface. So what I'm going to do is head over to the surface editor, load that up here, and we've got the ball surface right here and it's casting a shadow. Well, I'm going to go into Edit Nodes, and let me just slide this image over. And if I want to, I can tell a particular surface not to cast a shadow. And to do that, we just come over to Add Node, Spot Info, and we've got the Shadow Ray. And the Shadow Ray determines what the surface looks like when generating ray trace shadows. So what I can do is take the Shadow Ray and plug that right into transparency. And if I do a render, you can see that the object is not casting a shadow. But it's not the object, it's the actual surface. And to show this, I thought what we could do is head over to Modeler, and I'm going to grab, actually I'm going to grab everything except this centerpiece, and I'm going to call this ball ends. Synchronize, head over to layout. Okay, and now the ends are casting shadows here and here, but there's a gap in between because the strip in the middle is still called ball. If we wanted to do the exact opposite, I'm just going to copy, close this down, go to ball ends, paste, plug this into transparency. And now the middle is casting a shadow, but the ends aren't. So I don't have to separate it out as a separate object. Now we can take this even farther if I'm going to go back to Modeler and just call this ball, synchronize. I just wanted to get it back to one surface. Okay, let me make sure that this is working. Shadow Ray to transparency. Okay, there we go. Now, one of the added features of using Shadow Ray in the Spot Info node is that we can not only determine if the shadow's there or not, but we can make custom shadows. So we can have the object cast custom shadows. So I'm going to go over to, say, Crackle, and I'm going to plug Shadow Ray into the foreground and then plug the color into transparency. And now I'm getting a custom shadow. I'm able to use a texture. I can use an entire flow to control what the shadow is going to look like. And that's per surface. That's not based on the object. It's based on the surface. So now if you're wanting to control whether whether a particular item on your object is showing a shadow or not, or you want to control the type of shadow that it's casting, you can do it on a per surface basis, and you don't have to break up your objects, which is something that I used to do in the past to control some of this, is to just break up the objects, and then each object has its own render options of whether it's casting or receiving shadows or anything like that. So it's a really easy setup to just use the Shadow Ray in the Spot Info node. And of course you can plug in any kind of flow you want and then plug that into transparency to control the shadow that it's casting. So this works with ray trace shadows, so you need to make sure that in the render globals you have ray trace shadows on, and it doesn't work with a shadow map again, because that's not ray trace shadows. So just make sure you have that on. Come in to the surface that you want to work with, plug in the spot info node, use the shadow ray, and you're good to go.